Good morning. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Harmeen Mehta, who is the Global CIO and Head of Digital at Bharti Airtel and responsible for digitization and all engineering across India, South Asia, and about 14 African countries. She has decades of experience as a global CIO across the world and in over 30 countries, in fact. She's received a lot of awards. I'm just going to mention a few of them. She's the recipient of the prestigious 2018 MIT Sloan CIO Leadership Award, as well as the TM Forum Global CIO of the Year Award. Harmeen has also been recognized by the Economic Times as among the top 10 women in the telecom and tech industry across the globe, as well as she's been awarded the Women of the Decade in Innovation and Leadership by the Women Economic Forum. Today, in her keynote, Harmeen will talk about Custom 360, powering Airtel's digital brain for personalized customer engagement. Please join me in welcoming Harmeen via video from Delhi, India.
Hi everyone, it's such a pleasure to be here, and this is the power of technology, I guess, that you can be anywhere in the world and be talking to anybody else anywhere else in the world. Shani, I just want to do a voice video check just to make sure you guys can hear and see me okay?
Yes, perfect.
All good, thank you.
All right, perfect. So guys, I'll just talk about a little bit about what we're trying to do here, and then I'll just turn over and I'll share my screen as well so you guys can all see the slides that I have here. But I think the pleasure part of this entire transformation has also been the journey of working with a lot of new age tech companies, and Aerospike included. I think from the first time when we met Srini and described the idea of what we wanted to do, and at that time, even to my own ears, it sounded a little bit crazy, but I guess the best ideas are. And I take real pleasure in sharing with you, and what we're actually doing is a fundamental foundation layer that forms the basis of our entire transformation that we've been going through for the last 2 to 3 years. So if you just bear with me 1 second, I am just gonna share my screens, and then we can take it from there. All right, I hope everybody can see the screen, and I will just continue on from there. So basically is, part of our journey has been looking at what we wanted to do across for all our customers. Just to give you a little bit flavor of Bharti Airtel, we're one of the largest telecom providers in the world. We support about over 300 million customers on our base. And one of the biggest pleasures that we take is in our customer experience, in creating a lot of customer delight, and really being focused and centering all around the customer as well. And I think as we go around that journey, it has been the phenomenal struggle that we provide, both mobility as well as broadband and a TV service, a lot of digital services, and we have a payments bank as well, which is largely a very unique concept that India has, which was designed mainly for financial inclusion. So it's almost like small banking, but given the vast presence that companies like Airtel have, and the government gave out a few licenses. So imagine a telecom and a bank and a broadband company and a TV company all combined under one roof. And for a lot of historic reasons, all the legacy platforms, they basically had the various different forms of systems that have been hosting the customers for their own verticals. That's why we came up with the concept of Customer 360. We said we're going to take all of these 350 million customers, regardless of which line of business they belong to, and create a single repository which will actually power what we call the digital brain in the company. but it will also give us a complete 360-degree view of the customer. So let me share what I mean by that. So basically, if I were to, say every customer you have a family, you have your own connections, you have things in your home, whether it's your broadband or TV or whatever, and then you've got, some obligations, could be siblings, could be children, or could be parents that you actually pay for either their bills or take care of their services or so on and so forth. And then, funny enough, in today's world, we all are so influenced by our circle of, could be interactions or friends or colleagues, but word of mouth, somebody says it's great service, we all want to go and try. Somebody says this sucks, we just don't want to go and try it at all. And I think so one of the things was we actually wanted to map out this circle of influence. So we are able to pinpoint saying which of the people in a group of our customers is the true influencer. So we can target them with the right kind of offers that they could take to the rest of the gang. And I think as we started looking at that, came the concept of saying, how will we do this? And that's when we decided that we're going to take a lot of real-time triggers and everything that we get from all the various businesses that we have. And these triggers gave us the geographic, demographic, and service footprint for the customer. Then we said we had this data lake, which has all of the data that comes from all the business systems in a telecom world, which is called BSS. And these gave us all the sociographic, device-related, and psychographic data for all the customers. Then comes the network data lake. Now this is where we understand what their network experience is. So that gives us an understanding of their behavior as well as their experience on the network. And we took the power of all this and we said, how can we use everything to now predict whether it's the next action or the interests of the users, or just understanding what kind of frustration they might be feeling, or what their happiness score was with Airtel and with all these services combined. And I think as we started to do all that, the challenge that we had was not just about, every company says we got a data lake, we get real-time data, we go do this. What's the difference? I think the primary difference is when you've got 350 million subscribers and the amount of data that's coming in and that you're injecting every single day, your ingestion rate, what average companies do in probably 1 month is what Airtel does a little more than that in 1 day. We process over 100 billion records in 1 day in order to gather all this information. And in fact, that's growing at such a phenomenal pace that we will end this year with almost 200 billion records a day. Now that's a hell lot of a processing speed that's really needed, in order to process all this data. And that's where the whole layer of the technology came in. So what we wanted to do is take this power, this understanding, power it up into what we call our digital brain, and really use that for driving the entire campaign management life cycle, the entire omni-channel experience for the consumers, who no matter whether they're interacting with us through our call centers or our stores or on our app or on our web or any of the other properties. We have an entire digital TV service as well. So whether they're interacting on our TV app, we also run the biggest music app in the country. So whether they're on that, it just didn't matter. Any of the channels, they should have exactly the same experience. And then use that, as I said, to predict their next action. Also use it for digital advertising, which is another line of business. And create a personalization which is really down to a segment of one. And when I say a segment of one, that is easy when you have a few thousand customers. It gets a little challenging when you have a few 100,000 customers. It gets quite tricky when you have millions of customers. And it gets very, very tricky when you have between 300 and 350 million customers. And I think that's where we really started to scratch our brain and look for almost hunt all around the world saying who could be the right technology partner as we go through that. That's where we came up and said we're going to have a united view of the customer, which is based on Customer 360. This is largely powered by Aerospike. And on top of this, we have all our platforms. So we have a devices platform that allows you to purchase devices, take loans out on a device and pay through an EMI to go and buy them outright. There are lots of very unique schemes that the Eastern world offers. All those go in there. Then we have an entire services platform where we bring in a lot of third-party services, as well as something like Amazon Prime or Netflix, or a lot different services that we get from Uber or other food delivery companies, and so on and so forth. So these are the best offers for our consumers, but there are a lot of third parties coming into our platform and giving those offers and configuring those in real time. So all these service platforms, whether they're designed for the homes or designed for the offices. And then on top of that, if that wasn't enough, we decided to extend this into our bank, where we have an entire payments platform. We do almost $18 billion of throughput through our payments bank. So it's a very, very large entity. And a large part of this resides on this tiny little red layer at the bottom called Customer 360. But that is truly the digital brain that powers everything. And that's where we saw the true essence, agility, speed, as well as, I would say the scalability of something like Aerospike. Just to give you a little bit of a flavor, besides the volumes that we are injecting and the transactions, etc., that I talked about, the one other thing that really got us hooked into how we wanted to architect this was that from the inception itself, we realized that we needed very resilient persistence within Aerospike as well, and a few other architectural changes. And I think the way Srini and Brian worked through that as well and made the enhancements into the core product to allow that to happen was also something that we could have done only with probably a handful of companies in this world. So that's what makes our solution far more unique, gives us a real competitive edge in the market, and has allowed us to go to market in such a record time, because this entire piece we're talking about is probably happened in over the course of about 12 to 15, 16 months. So one of our biggest power as an organization is also the power of how we can take a lot of our digital properties, which are coming across from various different digital platforms that we have. So we've got the core telco app, which is my Airtel app, has got about 80 million users. We've got the TV app, which has got about another 80 million users, some overlaps, but some unique. And then we've got the music platform, which has got about 100 million users. We do a lot of cross-pollination between them. And what does that mean? What that means is, if somebody becomes a member of the telecom, they go and do a specific recharge, or they either take a specific plan, or they go and put a specific amount of money in their prepaid wallet. Instantaneously, we find out that what is the recharge they've done. They could be standing in front of any retail outlet. We've got about 1.5 million retail outlets in this world. They could be standing in front of any one of them in any part of any village in India. The moment they do the recharge is when we come to know in real time. And in real time, we determine their segment, saying if this is the recharge he's done, what tier does he belong to? Is he a platinum customer? Is he a gold customer? Or is he a black customer? Accordingly, the customer gets a lot of benefits. And as they are, as the real-time triggers, so what it takes from a technology point of view is, you've done the recharge, in real time, the trigger comes back into the digital brain, it calculates the segment, goes back, and tells all the other platforms saying, hey, this is a new customer, he now exists, and he belongs to this tier, and here are the benefits that he or she needs to get. And if he logs in at that very instance into any of the platforms, Literally in a matter of milliseconds to seconds, he will see those entire propositions come through and he can literally start enjoying them instantaneously. We live in a highly competitive world, so the world of difference in being able to do this right there and then has given us such a power to fight this very competitive battle. And that's the reason why one of the predictions of a lot of the analysts is that the one brand to back is Airtel, and all of these things have gone a long way in that. Now, if I take that, and if that wasn't enough, like I said, I've got 1.5 million retailers. Each one of them is fully digitized. We are a highly digital company. We don't do a lot of manual labor stuff anymore. But now, the other power is there are lots of campaigns that we drive, which are a combination of the right consumer in the right town, standing in front of the right retailer. Let me give you an example of that as well. So let's assume the consumer has gone for a recharge or to pay a bill, and he's standing in front of one retail outlet, which is also one of our banking outlets. The moment he does a recharge, I want the bank to give him an offer. So now I'm getting out of the telecom space and I want the bank to give them an offer. Now, the person is not going to stand in front of that retailer for no more than 2 to 3 seconds after he's finished the recharge, paid him the money. He's going to walk off the store. So if there's anything I want the retailer to say, I want that to almost pop up on the retailer screen in less than a second from when he's finished the telecom transaction. And now we're talking across organizations, so getting out of the telco realm, going into the bank and doing that instantaneously. And that's exactly what we do. We use a combination of a few technologies to bring that in, including the entire Aerospike suite, but our almost entire company, regardless of the ultra high volumes that we have, we rarely work in that real-time world, and 150 milliseconds means a lot in my world and to my team. Let me give you yet one more example. Now, this is in particular on the telco side. This is our core telco app. Now, it has a lot of Airtel services. Airtel is part of the Bharti group, and we have over 100 companies providing different solutions. So we happen to bundle in a lot of the group companies' products as well, whether it's the bank, like I spoke, or it's insurance, or even if it is cash lending, or device financing, and so on and so forth. So you have all the Airtel services, and you have all these third-party content services that we provide into the market. And then you have a lot of these third-party products, whether it's Uber or it's the Indian equivalent of Uber, which is Ola, or it is the biggest food delivery company, or it is the biggest travel company locally. A lot of these, they do different alliances. Since the day we partnered up with Netflix and Amazon Prime, in less than 1 year, we doubled their entire base that they had in India. More than doubled it. Amazon launched Amazon Pay in India, and we ran a scheme with them, which we did on the same platform, and that allowed them, in a matter of 65 days, reach 9 million consumers and give them an offer, which was taken. And I think a large part of that happened only because of this entire very, very heavy understanding of the consumer, which comes from Customer 360, that allows us to create a personalization which is really true only to that individual. And that's what the digital brain does. And we are also in the process of building a very deep platform called Team, which is largely about creating an open telco. So we're opening up all our APIs, and since everything in Airtel anyway works real time, it allows developers to actually come and develop solutions on top of our platforms. It also allows us to offer services, like for example, the 350 million customers that I have, I can offer an identity service to any startup that wants to use this to determine the identity of the consumers that are coming on their platform, and so on and so forth. And all these things work in real time, and each and every one of these services is powered by the Customer 360. And even if you were to log into the app, every single tile, every single word you see there, nothing is coded. Every single piece is completely unique to that customer. So if you were to open the app, I was to open the app, or somebody else was to open the app, the entire screen that they would see, the offers they would see, the order in which they would see, every single part of that is very, very different. It's going to be unique to me, unique to them, and so on and so on and so forth. And I think that's primarily the power of my work that I wanted to share out today. And I think I'm happy to turn over back to the podium there and see if anybody has any questions, thoughts, anything that you'd like to share, ask, whatever.
Thank you, Harmeen. Well.
Hi, Srini.
Okay, so are there any questions for Harmeen that the audience wants to ask her? Okay, there is one question here.
Thank you for the presentation. Very, very enlightening and powerful, especially being on 3 different platforms. I figure that's very hard. Could you double click a little bit on how and where you're heavily using Aerospike today in each of the platforms that you have? Thank you.
Sure, I can. So probably I would say the primary use is mainly in 2 areas. I think one of the biggest of those is, so Aerospike also is kind of a common layer that sits across our entire telco app. And there is a lot of not only caching that we do using Aerospike, but what we do is, since we live in such a high transaction, very high volume, ultra low latency world, we do our commits in a very unique way as well. And there are some transactions that we'll actually go and first commit into our cache and then go commit into the database. And in some cases, Aerospike is that the NoSQL database for me as well. But regardless whether I use it for that or not, my behavior is exactly the same. That if there is something that I want to react on an event almost instantaneously, I would actually go and put that in my Aerospike layer and then trigger out my reaction to that event from there itself. And I think the second biggest use is actually in Customer 360, where I basically take the information of all these 350 million customers, and that's what's really stored in the Aerospike layer. And we are doing, on an average, we do about 15,000 transactions per second from that Aerospike layer, but we are capacitized, and at peak we go up to 25,000 transactions per second. And this means every single system that exists in the ecosystem is querying Aerospike to ask information about the customer, because that's the single version of truth. So before any platform can make any decision or offer anything or even show a simple screen to the consumer, it's going to have to come and see, dip into Customer 360 and say, okay, who is this customer, what is his personalization, and what I need to show. And so these 15,000 transactions per second is basically about retrieving that information or writing that information. Any system across the entire universe of Airtel, when it does anything that touches the life of the consumer, it immediately comes and instantaneously in real time comes and tells Customer 360, saying this is what the customer has done. The customer went to this store, the customer did this transaction, he called the call center, he asked for a plan change, or he went to the app, he did a plan change. Every single event in the life cycle of the consumer is recorded. So much so that the telecom app actually has a lot of deep AI in itself, where it automatically tracks the network experience of the consumer as he or she roams around the city, and every few seconds as their network signal on the phone changes, it keeps pinging that back into a network data lake, out of which in real time we are calculating the frustration index of the consumer to see if he's continuously in a bad network area and he happened to be on the phone, then his frustration is going to rise. And if there is an outage in that area and he could be on the highway, and as he passes that outage area, I can immediately, through the power of Customer 360, go back and send him a message saying, you would have had experienced a bad patch in the last 1 hour, and it was because you were passing through an area which had a mass outage or a fiber cut or something like that. So those are all use cases where I use Aerospike today.
One more
Over
question.
here. Harmeen, thank you for that. Given the volume of data, can you comment a little bit about your infrastructure, whether you're on-prem, in the cloud, which one, even the hardware stack as well?
Sure, actually both. I am on the cloud but on-prem. We run the largest private cloud in the country. Because of regulatory reasons, I can't use a public cloud, so that's why about 4 years ago we started building a private cloud, and today more than 80-85% of Airtel actually runs on our private cloud, so almost everything. The bits and pieces that are not on the cloud are the ones that will never get there, either because it doesn't make sense or mostly because they're legacy platforms and I'm going to kill them over the next 12 months. So the way the infrastructure stack is, we do a lot of our development using microservices, so it's a fully microservice architecture. In fact, we are working on a very unique concept, and literally last 2 days I've been locked up in a room with my entire leadership team, working through saying how we're going to evolution to the next level. And we are actually thinking of taking all the open source principles and then applying them to our code in itself, so that we literally do full inner source, that any developer can develop any product or a service or a microservice. And if another developer wants to use it, today there's a high tendency of saying, oh, what I need is slightly different. So while I can use that, but I'm going to have to develop a layer on top of it, or I'm going to have to redevelop parts of it because I want to do something different. We're going to completely kill that and say, anybody wants to use any of the services, everything is 100% democratized. You can contribute into anybody's code, or anybody else could contribute into your code. But if you're the owner of the component or the owner of the microservice, then you determine the power of saying, I will accept this and allow this and take it into my general release, or, thanks buddy, great idea, I'm going to rewrite what you've written, because I think I would still deliver the same solution, but in a different way. So that ultimate power is with the owner of the platform. But my HR partner was there as well, and she came up with a brilliant idea of saying that we're going to start measuring every developer by actually rewarding this and getting them to take a sense of pride and going and saying, how many of you commit to others' code, and how many people commit into your component as well. So I think that's going to create a great camaraderie between the developers, or the way I like to call it, a lot of romance within my team, and I think that's always a good thing. On my hardware stack in particular, the entire piece is built on largely x86 infrastructure. So our entire cloud is basically open bare metal, and then with a VMware virtualization there and a full private cloud facility. I think most of the features that you would see on AWS are there on us, except maybe things like Spot and so on and so forth, because that in our environment didn't make sense, but largely we've got full elasticity. We ran a web campaign not very long ago, and I categorically remember that while we were running that campaign, there was a very big spike that we saw. This was about a couple of years ago, and we saw almost 2,500 times increase in traffic. So, these were my peaks, and literally went up, and I've never seen so much traffic in my entire life on my website. And I remember sitting in the office at about past midnight, and we were doing a wager between the teams saying, at what time are we going to crash? But this was the power of the cloud. It completely took up the entire space that it had, full elasticity, no human being touched anything. When it ran out of a lot of space, it started auto shutting down a lot of the dev environments and then the test environments as per the priority. And we went to 2,500 times the traffic. We sustained it for a few days, and then it automatically just collapsed again back to its normal usage size, and the environments got auto spun back. So seeing those happen, it's a great sense of pride actually watching that when you're, especially when you're the CIO admin deck saying that you're going to crash. And don't do that. It was wonderful. And the other part is some parts of the companies use containers, but many parts don't. I think it's just the battle of the minds. It's what the different use cases are, and horses for courses. A large part of the big data stack runs on Hadoop. We happen to use Cloudera for our customer consumer stack and native for a network data lake. And then on top of that, we use Abinitio. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but it's a Boston-based company started by a lot of MITians, and they actually are my ingestion layer. So they bring this 100 billion records from all over the country, all the touch points into my data lake. And they give me the power to be able to inject this entire data. And I do it in way less than a day because I have to leave almost 50% room that in case something goes wrong, the next day I have to catch up on the day before. So that's kindly largely our intelligence digital brain and the big data stack and the hardware stack. Does that answer your question, or is there anything else you'd like to know?
Yeah, I think at least the person who asked the question is nodding, so I think you answered.
Okay.
Other questions? I do have a question myself, Harmeen.
Sure. That's honest, but go for it.
Yeah, no, it's a very simple question because I've worked with a lot of large companies, but I think Airtel is extremely unique in terms of how I have seen you and your team approach solving problems, business problems using technology. I think I personally believe that the companies which will survive and grow are those companies which can take control of the technology and solve business problems effectively, right? Now, was there always a culture at Airtel, or did you have to change it at some point? Or can you talk a little bit about that challenge? Because I think I see a lot of other big companies going through that, some of them well, but Airtel is doing it really well from whatever I can see. So I'd appreciate your thoughts on that.
Sure, Shani. No, it wasn't like that at all. In fact, just to give you an idea, when I walked through the door, we didn't have any tech. Everything was outsourced, lock, stock, and barrel to IBM. We were actually in a rev share. It was a record rev share deal. It's a Howard case study as well about how Airtel started up with doing two revolutionary rev share deals, one with Ericsson for the network and one with IBM for all their tech. And it basically meant that it was in IBM's interest to build the right stack and grow as Airtel grew. But at the same time, they would make all the technology decisions. They would decide how much to invest in tech and engineering and so on and so forth. So I think my first year was really spent in killing that contract, insourcing everything. Even the code didn't belong to me. So literally, extracting code out of 3,000 developers' laptops and bringing it into a single repository. That was a fun challenge. So we literally started from that, changing a large part of the workforce as well, because those were more project managers and coordinators rather than hardcore tech developers. But India has such amazing tech talent, and that's where I had a lot of fun. So we created Lex Lab, which really became the digital arm of Airtel Engineering and the powerhouse for everything I talked about today. And I think as we built that out, I literally hired every single person myself over the course of the last 3 years. And that's how we built out both the people stack and the technology stack. But I think that gave me one unique advantage. We were able to run the entire company, or at least engineering is actually on a completely different pay scale, a completely different hierarchy level than the rest the organization. We created our own level of hierarchies the way we wanted it to be. And it was completely, based on a startup model. I run engineering like a startup. It's got that culture, we've got no rules. I hate rules, so I don't give any rules to my team as well. And I think that creates a very empowering but a very open culture. So, we're completely non-hierarchical. We employ people from a lot of my directs, and their next levels are ex-Google, ex-Amazon, and ex-Flipkart, Snapdeal, a lot of the cool startups from India itself. So it's a great bunch of people, and they're the ones who are the future of the company, and they're changing everything. And everybody thinks they know better than everybody else.
Yes. Well, thank you for that. I think it's good, and I really appreciate the answer. Question? Any other? Oh, there's one more question. Okay.
Thanks for the presentation. That was really interesting. One question I had is, you're obviously storing a lot of PII data.
Yeah.
Has that given you any challenges, and how much of that is stored in Aerospike, and any challenges you faced in that part of your stack in particular?
I think initially we had a lot more challenges than I have today. I mean, for example, one of the things was that our dependence on Aerospike was so high that if, let's say, there was an infrastructure failure or my entire VM went down and the whole Aerospike layer went down with it, when it would come up, just getting the data at such high volume, getting the equivalence of indexing done, so I'm able to do the queries in record time. I mean, it used to take us a very long time to do that. Even to rebuild the caching there, it used to take us, in fact, the first time it crashed, it took us hours to build. And trust me, within a few minutes, I was on the phone with Srini, and I don't even remember what time it was in California. But, so we solved a lot of those problems together, and I think now we are moving towards building one of the largest cloud active infrastructures, so building that resilience and redundancies at all layers. So it's at an infra layer, it's at the virtualization layer, it's at the application layer. And also we've changed a lot of the architecture within Aerospike that Srini and team did in order to get over those problems and really create a more heavy persistence so that the caching layer could almost autofill itself because the persistence layer is right underneath it. And it's not acting like a regular SQL database. So I think those are some of the things that there were lots of such challenges. I think when we started, our aim was to get to about 5,500 transactions per second. That was the first milestone. And we went to 10,000, we went to 15,000. And now what we're working towards is 25,000. Our goal is actually 50,000 transactions per second. So I think Srini still has a lot of work to do.
Fair enough. Any other final questions? There's one more.
Yeah, thanks a lot. It was a great presentation, very insightful. Question is, I think you accomplished a lot, of course, based on the presentation. So what do you see the next 3-4 years look like from Airtel and the experience, where you want to take it next?
I think this year is going to be the most exciting. I think if we can do this inner source piece, I think we will become another story. In fact, MIT is doing a story on our tech evolution this year as well. And I think if I can do that, then I'm very sure that MIT is publishing that. So I think this year, with this entire piece of tech and sourcing, the kind of a very crazy active cloud technology that we're currently trying to build. The other most dramatic piece I'm working on is actually a zero ops organization. When I walked through the door, I had about maybe 2,000 people in operations, and today I have several hundred. But my NOC, which used to be 150 odd people in the NOC, is now less than 8 people. And those 8 people are there because they're working on autonomizing it even further. So I have a full automated NOC, full AI ops. And I think we've done that in large parts, but not across the organization, so I think we're going to take it there. The other piece is I think as we get into a heavier advertising stack, I think that's going to create a lot of power and help us use the same infrastructure but for another revenue line. I've also recently taken over 2 lines of businesses, so I now run the cloud and the securities business that Airtel has. And so we are also taking this entire technology to a lot of the B2B and enterprise customers that we have and see how we can help them build tech stacks using the same learnings. And I think the final piece is this platform called Team that we are building, which is really going to open up the entire telco, and we're going to have anybody can come and partner with us, and it'll take us days, if not hours, to not only register themselves as a partner, but use the APIs and get up and running depending on what they want to do. And that goes for content partners, it will go for lifestyle companies, for app and digital companies, we can do app distribution for them. So a lot of these things are going to be all self-service. And then I think on our enterprise side, I mean, we've still got lots of work to do in digitizing our enterprise part of the business, so that's going to be one of our other challenges as well.
Okay. Thank you very much, Harmeen. That was very informational and very, very inspiring too. Thanks for spending the time with us.
Thank you very much, Shani, and thank you everybody. It's been great talking to you all, and apologies I couldn't be there in person, but I'm glad we can do this at least remotely. Thank you very much and have a great day.